What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Monkey King MMA show. And the first thing you might be noticing is we're not in our usual setup. Don't worry, we'll be back on our usual setup by next video. This is just a travel temporary type of video. And that's why my picks are coming out so late. I wanted to drop this video like 2 days ago, but road trips, family stuff, ultimately it's okay. We compromise and I release it a day before the fights actually happen. Let's get right into it. UFC 299 wasn't the best card for me. We finished that card plus 2.02 units up, so wasn't the worst either. We finished in the green. But this card, we're going to come out and we're going to actually, hopefully, burn the books to the ground. So let's get right into this. Let's get right into UFC Vegas 88. Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura in the main event. These are all of my full card predictions. First up on the bout order, we have Charalampos Grigoriou versus Chad Anheliger. I want to start off by saying Chad Anheliger has some extremely great movement. He has great footwork, great head movement, and also, he has slick striking. He has the ability to hit you with things that you don't even see coming, like off timing, like head kicks. I think this type of matchup favors Grigoriou because Grigoriou is going to put pressure on Anheliger, back him up to the cage, and try to just put finishing sequence combinations on him. I think this is where the new guard takes over. I have Grigoriou winning this fight by KO or decision. We move on up the card to Thiago Moises versus Mitch Ramirez. So I think Mitch Ramirez is being fed to the sharks here. He's not someone that should be fighting in a UFC fight against Thiago Moises after being knocked out in his Contender Series fight against Carlos Prates. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The matchmaking is just unreal here, and Moises is going to win inside the distance. We move on up the card to Jaqueline Amorim versus Cory McKenna. Poppins is here to get a W. Amorim is a winnable matchup for McKenna. Amorim has moments of extremely low fight IQ. She has cardio that only lasts her until the end of round 2. And so I feel good about the fade play here. It's just going to be a sprinkle for me. I'm not willing to go big here. I don't know much about these, lower tiers of women's MMA. But yeah, I'm rooting for Poppins, Cory McKenna to win this fight by decision. We move on up the card to Joshua Culibao versus Danny Silva. In this matchup, I think that Danny Silva is going to want to put a lot of pressure and just constantly putting boxing combinations on Culibao, not giving him space. And Danny Silva needs to get into range. He needs to keep it on the inside, make it very dirty. And I think his route to victory is to get Culibao out of there early. I think the longer it goes, I think Culibao is going to be able to manage the distance. I think he's going to be dictating the pace of the fight, countering effectively, and ultimately just controlling the entire fight. We move on up the card to Jafel Filho versus Osbourne. The main piece of footage that I watched from Filho is Filho versus Mokaev. As we all know, that crazy knee bar submission that Filho was throwing up against Mokaev that left the whole world shocked. Like, ouch, my knee type of submission. Insane submission skills from Filho. But if we really watch the fight, Mokaev's lead leg body kicks were working from round 1. Because Filho prefers to strike in an orthodox stance. I think Osbourne, in his southpaw stance, has some of the most deadliest kicks to the midsection. I think he has deadly kicks low, mid, high. And so I think Osbourne from southpaw is going to be landing damage on Filho. And if Filho is able to survive and land a desperation takedown, I'm hoping Osbourne has trained for that, to defend the takedown or to get a reversal so that he can, still win the fight. We move on up the card to Josiane Nunes versus Chelsea Chandler. This is definitely a weird fight to call. Personally, I was thinking about staying away from this fight, but I think that Chelsea Chandler has the tendency to stay in the pocket, eat a bunch of shots, and honestly, why not sprinkle on Josiane Nunes? Why not? We move on up the card to Mike Davis versus Natan Levy. So this is one of those fights where I think Mike Davis is going to be blanketing Natan Levy skill for skill. I think the wrestling is what Mike Davis is going to be going to for rounds 1 and 2. And The biggest threat that I see for Mike Davis is going to be Nathan Levy's kicking game, obviously. The midsection kicks, those work really well. Maybe him going up top every now and then, that's going to be going well. Just mixing it up in general. I think that's going to be, having Mike Davis guessing all the time. And yeah, Nathan Levy's a dangerous striker, but I think that Mike Davis, skill for skill, is the better fighter. And so I'm going to be rolling with Mike Davis to win this fight by decision. We move on up the card to Gerald Meerschaert versus Bryan Barbarena. Bryan Barbarena going up to middleweight is already a huge red flag to me. I don't think that Bryan Barbarena is going to be moving like a UFC fighter should at 85. I think Gerald Meerschaert is going to be able to take this fight to the ground at some point. It's not like Bryan Barbarena has great takedown defense. And I think that Gerald Meerschaert, the chokes are going to be there. The guillotines are going to be there. Rear naked is going to be there. I think he's going to be able to find it. And that's why I'm rolling with Gerald Meerschaert to win this fight by submission or decision. We move on up the card to Pannie Kianzad versus Macy Chiasson. I think Macy Chiasson in this matchup, her reach is going to be doing her favors. Pannie Kianzad is going to be struggling to find a way to get into the range. And whenever she gets frustrated, I think she's going to shoot for a desperation takedown. I think Macy Chiasson is going to have a grappling advantage. I think she's just a bigger person in general, a bigger fighter. And so she's going to be able to, find submissions or possibly just win on the scorecards, out-grapple Pannie Kianzad for 3 rounds. I see that happening too. I have Macy Chiasson winning by submission or decision in this fight. We move on up the card to C-Rod versus Isaac Dulgarian. I don't see how you can be on necessarily a bad side for this fight, but also at the same time, I don't think you should be putting more than 0.5 units on this fight just because there's so much that can happen. This is 2 very talented guys. A lot of question marks surrounding C-Rod. In my personal opinion, not being able to make weight is a big factor. Call me old school, call me crazy, but I think you need to be able to make weight. And until then, those 2 wins that he has over Cameron Simon and Raul Rosas Jr., there's asterisks by them in my book. I think, honestly, the big difference is that whenever the fight goes to the ground, I think Dulgarian, being that 145er, the one from the naturally higher weight class, he's going to be landing some elbows. We see that ground and pound multiple times in Dulgarian's fights. And I think if he's ever presented that opportunity, the elbows are flying out. And I'm very excited to see that. I'm excited to see C-Rod tested. And I'm rolling with Dulgarian by decision. We move on up the card to Ovens St. Preux versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Honestly, I don't know why Ovens St. Preux is still fighting, because whenever I saw the way Felipe Lins completely just walked through him, I was a little bit worried for OSP. OSP doesn't look like he wants to fight anymore, and Nzechukwu is kind of scary. He's a slow starter, Nzechukwu, but he's very precise and he's very well timed, and once he gets rolling, he's dangerous. He's dangerous in both grappling. He does great work in the clinch. I have Kennedy Nzechukwu to win in round 1, but honestly, the prop value doesn't look great, so I might just be going with the under 1.5 rounds. That looks like a great take to me. We move on up the card to Bryan Battle versus Ange Loosa. I think Bryan Battle, personally, is going to be better everywhere except for the hands. I think Ange Loosa has that hand power where if he lands a punch, he might just sleep Bryan Battle. But I think Bryan Battle has Bryan Battle has a lot of depth to his kicking game, and he also has a lot of wrinkles to his submission game. He has a ton of experience, and I honestly like the way he scraps. This is a pick where I honestly think I'm going to have to go with the junkyard dog, the guy who's just always there to scrap for your money and goes toe-to-toe with anybody. We move on now to the main event, Tai Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura. And in this fight, obviously, Tai Tuivasa having that meniscus surgery, that honestly raised a concern for me. When I look at Tybura, this is an opponent where I think Tai Tuivasa, if he can't beat Tybura, he's going to have to call it a retirement. Because who else is he going to beat? Like, who in the top 15 is he going to beat anymore? It's just going to have to be fighting random cans. And I don't want to see that for Tuivasa. I think this is where he has to make a statement. And Tybura has a lot of openings for title and big shots. I think this is literally setting UFC setting the stage for a Tai Tuivasa KO. And so I'm definitely sprinkling on Tai Tuivasa to win this fight by KO. I appreciate you all for watching. If you want to get my picks early, make sure to join my Discord. Link will be in the description down below. And I appreciate you all for watching once again. Make sure to comment down below Elon Musk to let me know that you've been watching to this point in the video. I'm sorry for the late video. I'll get it up earlier next time. And we'll be back in our usual setup. Peace out. Love you guys.